And a good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens. My co-host, Annalicia Haynes.
Hi, everyone.
She's still here for the summer. And making an appearance today, representing the Mattoon Fire Department. That's really hard to say, isn't it, Chris? Mr. Chris Phipps.
How
Welcome.
are you, Jeff?
I'm good. So now you were named the interim, police chief of just a few weeks ago at Mattoon. And then two of your first 3 days, there was a couple of fires, including the big fire at Shores Jewelry. So just kind of talk about as you got settled into the job and then wham, just right back into it, I guess. Not that you were ever out of it, but you know what I mean.
Well, those kind of fires come along about once every 10 years. I think the biggest one they'd had before that was the Villa fire. Before that was probably the Walkers fire. So they come along about once every 10 years. And my predecessor, I think he came in, he had just been promoted, and the Villa fire occurred. And I guess trial by fire, I get the Shores fire on the third day of my starting at Mattoon Fire.
So take us through that day when you found out that Shores was on fire, and what do you do as a police chief, and kind of the course of action that you implemented. Fire chief. We won't promote you there yet.
Well, basically, since it was my third day, I hardly knew most of the personnel, so I worked side by side with the incident commander, Robert Alexander, who was the shift captain that day, and we coordinated. If there was something he needed, I took care of it, and basically assisted. We kind of coexisted to start with, not knowing everybody yet. Not knowing all the equipment yet was still a learning curve there, so I learned it real quick.
Now, in that situation, I mean, you've been in fire in your whole career, so at least you knew that. But it was probably a kind of a weird situation, not knowing the crew, not knowing the guys, and maybe not knowing the strengths and the weaknesses of some of the guys. And that's where Bob really helped you out.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it too, is knowing what kind of strengths these guys have and what weaknesses are. But it worked out really well. We have a thing called the MABUS, which is a mutual aid box alarm system, which was developed, excuse me, during the Chicago fire. They have the box cards from back then even, and what it is as an incident scales up or ramps up, you call in different cards, and different agencies come in and fill those needs that you have and those resources that you have by the different events and different levels. And I think we ended up with 8 other area fire departments and over 60 additional firefighters at the scene helping us.
At what point after the fire had taken hold, that you knew that this was going to be a long-term, incident on scene?
Well, that was one of our main concerns. The one thing that really scared me the most was that we lose the whole block. So Plan B came into place, and Plan B was the positioning of 2 hi-hos or excavators on each end of the block. And need be, if it got away from us, we could nibble away in the middle and collapse 2 more buildings on each side and have one big pile on fire, as opposed to losing the whole block.
Oh, that's okay. Interesting. I guess let's go back to the beginning of you being named the interim chief. What led you to want to do this? I mean, is it that fireman's code of helping out, or were you really interested in coming over to Mattoon and doing this job for a year?
Well, I was excited at the challenge, but I had worked with Mayor Gover when I was at Charleston on some issues and different things that we had going, and we'd talked several times, so we had a mutual respect there. And Kyle Gill, the city administrator, used to work in Charleston.
That's right.
So I knew him, and they approached me and asked me if I would be interested in helping them out, and I said sure. So out of my respect for those two, probably more than anything, was the reason that I took over. I have another friend that just retired from Mattoon Fire Department, Doug Dotson, who was a shift captain, and I think he made that transition a lot easier. I've known him since high school, and he
was 1 year older than me, I think, in school.
Yeah.
So, let's go back to the Shores thing. You know, during I like because it was just such a big event that night and into the next day. But I guess the good news is, were you amazed that there was no injuries? I mean, when you think about that, because there was a lot of different businesses, apartments up top, and just firemen not getting hurt as well. Really.
Yeah. Well, anytime somebody can trip over a hose, strains and sprains and those kind of things occur all the time. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a true testament, and I got to see in real event how Mattoon Fire operates, and they operate safely. They're a professional group of guys, and immediately I gained a huge respect for them and what they can do.
I guess you learn your staff pretty well that way. Instead of just meetings and training, it's like it's real life. Now I know what you guys can or can't do.
So when you go into a fire such as that, right, and thank God that it doesn't happen as frequently as people may think. You said that it's like once every 10 years or so.
On a fire that
scale.
Magnitude.
So when you, I guess for any situation, how does the chain of command work? Do people know? Do the firemen know what they're doing when they walk in? Do they know what position they're going to be at? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, initially on a call or a response like that, you'd have a couple of engine companies and a ladder company show up, and they all have assigned tasks on what they do. So in that fire, that engine company went in to make sure that no one was in there and try to find the seat of the fire. They were unable to get to the seat of the fire, being it was on the third floor of the building. That was one of the problems that ended up causing us some frustration. Was we put a lot of water on it, but we were a defensive fire after everybody was out. In order not to get anybody hurt, so we couldn't get to the water to the seat of the fire because of the roof. Once the fire broke through the roof, we were able to hit the seat of the fires when we got it put out.
Oh, because it would just be too dangerous then to go on the roof.
If you can imagine a box that's on fire, and you can't go inside that box, and you can't attack it from the left or the right, only the front and the back and the top. That's what we were tasked with doing.
Wow, and by doing that, you guys were able to save that entire block. Because that's what I remember reading, was that everything was so close together. And I think only a couple businesses next door to it just
Luigi's got some damage.
Yeah.
And they're yet to open. And
so you mentioned the high hose. I can't remember the term, but what does that mean?
The hi-ho?
Yeah, or whatever.
It's an excavator. It's
Okay.
like it has a big arm on it.
Okay.
It's with a thumb that it can crunch and pull things away and pull things apart.
Oh, okay.
So plan B in this instance was to take the buildings down on each side of Shores Jewelry and confine the fire to one small space and not lose the rest
were
of
you
the
ever
blocks.
close to getting to that point?
To losing the...
Yeah, I mean, were you ever close to actually starting to crunch those buildings in, or how close were you? I guess
that call would have had to have been made by the city council guys, and of course I'm sure they would have taken my input on it, but no. Once we had them in place, I felt 100% better that we weren't going to lose the block, but then we started getting some water on the seat of the fire, so it started diminishing. And everybody breathed a sigh of relief.
Yeah, that'd been a tough call to have to make, right? Have they actually ever have we found the point of origin, and we know what caused the fire yet? I know that's kind of been something the newspapers a little bit hasn't reported yet what exactly has been finalized.
We know the area of origin. We know that the fire started on the third floor somewhere. But there's so much damage, and the risk of the collapse of that third floor was too imminent to put somebody in to actually dig through it to find out. And with that much damage, we weren't going to find the cause of the fire per se, but we know it was in the area of origin, which was in a storage area.
And since then, Harold Shores has announced he is going to rebuild.
Yes.
They're relocating temporarily towards the end of the block, and then we'll rebuild here in the next couple of years. So.
And we couldn't have asked to for something to happen to someone that's that devastating to both their family business and their family, and potentially their loved ones that were in the building. Gosh, you couldn't ask for a better person to been there and have the attitude that Harold had.
It's a long. I mean, and those are the kind. Ironically, it's National Small Business Week all across the country, and then Shores is a perfect example of a small business that's been in Mattoon for as long as I remember. It's always been in that same location. They've remodeled it a couple of times, but always been right there.
Yeah, and the tenants on either side have both been very good to work with. So everybody, and the community, oh my gosh, I've never experienced anything quite like it. Churches brought stuff, Burger King brought stuff, all the food and pizzas and anything you wanted to rehydrate was there. Anything you could imagine was there for all the workers. And Garrett Kepley, even the next day or two, cooked steaks for everybody. And it was quite the outpouring.
I think that's what's fascinating about Mattoon and Charleston, respectfully, is this idea of community support and everyone coming together for something like this.
Yeah.
You know, everyone feels like they have a part in saving something that means something to them. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was fascinating.
What about the public that night? I know there's some people that were hoping that there was less public around, but when there's a fire downtown, you're going to get people gawking and watching. I mean, how do you deal with that while you're trying to put out a gigantic blaze like this?
Well,
Or do you even have to worry about it, I guess?
the police department usually takes care of it by setting up a perimeter for us. But I know several people said that they were there, and I didn't see them. My brother, in fact, walked. Hey, I saw you at the fire the other day, and I'm like, I didn't see you.
That's funny. What led you, Chris Phipps, to get into to want to be a firefighter, to be a fireman?
Well, I got into it, ironically, on the EMS side. Years ago, I grew up in Windsor, of course, and years ago, Dr. Zinchlog was a local doctor in Mattoon at the old Mattoon Hospital, and I had to have stitches in my knee. And he gloved me up and let me put the last stitch in my knee and showed me how to tie it. Now, I don't think that the ER docs would do that today.
No, not today. That would not be allowed.
But I thought, boy, I want to do something like this. And another big influence on me was Jeff Waite from Sullivan. He used to be the Sullivan fire chief when I was in high school, came and talked, and he was a paramedic. And of course, I grew up watching Emergency and Roy DeSoto and Randolph Mantooth and those guys. And that got me interested in it. So I took the test for Charleston. One of the guys broke his leg playing basketball, and I was the only EMT on the list. So they hired me to start with, and I worked for him for 6 months. And then after that, another guy had a heart attack, and I took his place and ended up sticking around for the next 28 years.
That's pretty cool. You mentioned EMS. I'd be remiss if we didn't at least ask you your thoughts on the current state of the ambulance service and all the stuff going on in Mattoon. I know that's not really fair for you as a 1 year possibly interim manager over there, but I have to ask your thoughts.
Well, I think it's going to play out. What'll happen will play out, and I think Mitchell Jordan has been taking care of business. They've been doing a good job. So right now there's a moratorium on allowing more ambulances to come in, and I think that was a good call on the city council's part. As long as they can take care of business and protect the public that way, and we have the fire department that can back it up with several paramedics on the fire department, I think that the community will be okay. So the proof is in the pudding. We'll see.
And you have to be an EMT to be a Mattoon firefighter, right? Is that correct?
You have to be a paramedic.
Paramedic, okay.
Yes.
Okay. And what's the difference between paramedic and EMT?
Well, they're both EMTs.
Okay.
Emergency medical technician - basic or - paramedic.
All right.
So
you learned
basics can stop bleeding,
Yeah.
bandage, splint. Paramedics going to be able to start IVs, do cardiac monitoring,
Oh, okay.
push drugs of different various drugs, intubate, put tubes in and breathe for people, and it's more advanced skills.
Do they do stitches too?
No, they don't do stitches, but you know what? That wouldn't surprise me if they do for long.
Let's go. When we talk about your career as a firefighter, we're talking to Chris Phipps today, the interim Mattoon Fire Department chief. What's the worst fire that you've ever had to go be, either in charge of or active run up the building, as they say, run into the building?
Probably the most amazing fire to me, the most one that stands out in my mind the most, is the Millennial Apartments. And a lot of people think that, you had to use a lot of water. Well, we didn't put a drop of water on that fire.
Oh, really?
It was 66,000 square feet on fire, all of it on fire at one
Now, when was
point.
this? I'm trying to.
That would have been in 2001, I believe. It was where right behind EL Crackers.
Okay.
It was under construction.
I am totally. I don't remember that. I don't know if what I would have been doing to not know that. So.
We didn't have enough pumpers to pump that amount. It would have taken 24,000 gallons per minute just to keep that fire from getting any bigger.
So when you
And
can't put water on it, do you just try to control the outside, or how does that
try
work?
and protect the surrounding structures, and that's what we did. I believe there were 23 vehicle exposures and 16 resident exposures. It melted the blinds and the windows across the street in all four directions.
Holy cow!
I think Charleston Fire Department ended up with like $7,000 or $8,000 damage in melted lenses on lights and hubcaps and stuff like that.
So you just have to let that burn in that situation, correct?
We weren't going to contain it. We weren't going to cool it down any. So very little water got put on it, if any, until after it was in the basement.
I don't know if I feel worse that I don't remember that, or just amazed about that story that with no water on a fire. I mean, that's when you're not on call. What the whole idea of this, what are the guys doing, guys or gals, I should say, to get ready? I mean, I know we hear the stories. They're cooking and they're playing cards, or they're sitting out, watching cars go by. But what do they actually? They have to have some duty responsibilities. Is that correct? Right?
Well, that's all changed. When I first got on in 1981, we played cards in the afternoons. There's not a whole lot of time for that anymore. I know with Charleston, since they run ambulance, they've got ambulance calls they're going on every day. Mattoon has numerous other things that they've got going on. For one thing, their inspection department and the fire inspections is keeping them busy. Right now they're testing hydrants, as Charleston is. Hose testing, all the hose has to be tested. Mattoon has over 1,000 fire hydrants that have to be flowed and tested and recorded, maintained. The building inspections, every business has to have an occupancy inspection to put down the number of people that can be in there, whether it's a assembly or church or what have you. So that keeps us pretty busy in both towns.
So those rumors of you guys just hanging around for those 24 hours, that's all false, right?
I don't remember the last time I saw a deck of cards in the fire station.
All right, now I have to ask, because you worked at Charleston for so long. Now you're at Mattoon. Did the Charleston guys give you a little ribbon because you went over to the quote unquote rival school, whatever you want to call it, town?
Yeah, I've got it from a few people, but it's all in jest.
And that's what I mean.
And it's
just
all
fun.
good-natured ribbing. And the Mattoon guys, I feel comfortable with them that if they're going to give me some ribbing, then I feel like I'm doing something right.
That's cool.
It's kind of like being a Cardinal and a Cub fan.
Yeah. Like today, you don't want to be a Cardinal fan because the
That's
Cubs
right.
just swept, and then 3 weeks from now it'll switch. But it's all that. When you go on fire calls, what do people not know? When you're on a fire call, you're there on the scene. What do people not know? I mean, we you think fire, the layperson thinks, get water on the fire, it goes out. But what do you not know in terms of for the public to know? If I was clear enough, I might not have been.
Well, I think probably the number one thing is that they need to stay back. You see these 2 or 3 trucks pull up with guys that are wearing $3,000, $4,000 worth of protective gear, and when someone walks up in a t-shirt and shorts, it kind of makes you think there's a reason, guys, that we're here with this gear on and all this equipment. So please get back a little bit. But initially, I know that the curiosity, they want to see what's going on and stuff like that. But before that perimeter gets set up to where people can watch from a safe distance, I guess the thing I'd like for them to all know is to just stay back, and there'll be a point where you can get up a little closer and see what's going on.
Now that we're getting into maybe spring and summer season around here, we don't know for sure, right? Any fire safety tips for, I know it'll be Wiener roast season and people cooking out in their backyard more, some things that people should just take note of as they start that part of the year?
Well, probably the number one thing is the fireworks are going to be starting here in July. And those...
For a month.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm sorry, I can't stand fireworks, even when I was a kid.
People
But-
just need to be aware that, there's people with pets and animals and kids and elderly people and people that like to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And if they are going to use fireworks, to be safe with them, that, it's not worth losing fingers and hands and eyes and all the things that you've been warned about over the years. So, and make sure that you purchase them off of someone that's reputable.
Okay, that's good. How many calls do you guys, how many calls do you guys go on a week? Do you guys track that? It's a good idea how many times you're actually out on a call?
We do. I'm not sure what that number is, but it's since we haven't been running ambulance, it's reduced. That number has been reduced. However, we still go on medical assist calls and help with numerous other things other than fires. Fires have went down since the invention of the smoke detector. So that's reduced the number of actual fires. But we still go on smoke complaints, investigations, inspections, assists with ambulance. We go to any MVA. And one thing you may have seen in the news lately is the Scott's Law.
Yeah.
And how...
Yeah, I live in Mattoon. I have to come to Charleston, so
Yeah.
I see it quite often.
That's very dangerous being out there on that highway or that interstate. So a lot of times you'll see two trucks and you're wondering why one's blocking the whole road for something that might be a small incident on the side of the road. Well, there's a reason that that's being blocked, and that's to protect those people that are working on the road.
And we've got an Illinois State Trooper coming in a couple of weeks on Issues Attitudes to talk about some of that stuff on the highway and safety and things. So we look forward to Trooper Lillard, Tracy Lillard.
Oh, yeah.
Will be here.
Trooper
so,
Tracy.
Yeah, Trooper Tracy. So I'm looking forward to that. You have job openings right now? Anything happening? Or you know?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we do. We are testing at Lakeland College on the 22nd of June, and that's open to anyone that's a firefighter 2 certified or a paramedic. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have either one of those immediately to take the test, but you need to be certified before you can come on board.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'd love to have local people that are trained or paramedics and firefighters to take that test. We should be hiring up to 4 off that list. And I would recommend that you go to the fire department's Facebook page, has information on it. The city should have some information on it, but it's IO Solutions has an application. It's an online application you can fill out. I think there's a small fee, maybe $25. Fill out the information, take that, get the pertinent do's and don'ts, and come to Lakeland on the 22nd and take that test. We'd love to hire local people.
With that being said, what advice do you give to new and young firefighters?
Well, my advice is if this is something that you like, you're going to love your career. I've been in the fire service in some aspect since I was 18 years old, 19 years old, and I loved going to work. I don't think I was ever late once for work. I was always there early. And when you love what you do, it's not a job.
There you go. I've heard that a lot.
And the time flies fast.
All right, now we're going to ask you some unrelated questions as we end this. So some of them might have to do with fire, some might not. If you want to answer, you can. Or do you have any other questions for?
No, that's
Okay.
it.
All right. I think you kind of mentioned this, but do you have a guy that another guy or any person in your life, a teacher, coach, or whatever that you look up to that's just your mentor? If you have to ask somebody for a little advice.
Oh, yeah. I would say that'd have to be my dad. He's had some health issues lately, but I'm still lucky. My brother and I and my sister are both lucky that he's still around, and to be able to, even though I may not ask all the time, but
You know he's there.
I know he's there, and I have that sounding board if I ever need anything.
How is it?
Do I get a pay raise if I say like you or,
Well, you
or
can
the
say
university?
Remember who you work for. If you could go to dinner with one person who's alive right now today in this world, who would it be?
Someone that's alive.
Yeah. Everybody
Yadier,
always asks the dead question. So.
Yadier Molina.
Oh, there you go. Alicia?
I feel obligated to say my grandma because I haven't seen her in a while.
That's
so.
a good one. I don't know that. Now, do you have a favorite TV or movie that has something to do with fire departments or anything? I know you talked about emergency way back when we were younger, but has there been another one? You know,
Well, I'd probably have to say Backdraft. I always liked that one. That was kind of based off the Chicago fire, so it was.
and the new Chicago Fire's not bad either. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I watched that.
Okay.
It's-
What about you?
The Chicago Fire.
Sure.
Yeah.
Favorite class that you took in high school? You know, sort of like you should take you way back to Windsor.
Industrial arts.
Industrial arts.
I think any English class that I had, I like to write.
English.
Yeah, I'm weird.
Man, do firemen really have to be clean shaven? Is that just or is that just one of those?
Your face piece has to be able to seal.
Is that what it is?
So not necessarily clean shaven, but you have to be able to have that face mask seal.
There you go. Because there's that TV commercial that says they have to have their. I just wondered. Had to ask you. What is the one question you hate to get asked from your point of view when people ask a firefighter something?
Boy,
I think I stumped him.
I don't think I have the one that I hate to be asked.
Yeah. Is there anything out there? You don't have to. If you don't, if there's, that's okay.
I can't think
Why
of
are
any.
fire hydrants red?
Oh yeah, you guys can talk about
No, actually, I love to talk about the fire service, and so any question I welcome.
Any misconceptions about firemen? Something that we don't know. I like the insight.
The cards and the lazy boys, that one kind of sticks in my craw sometimes, but I'm sure donuts do with police officers too. So
Well, we've learned that, that's funny. All right, we're about out of time again. Thank you so much for coming in, Chris, and congratulations on the job, and more importantly, congratulations on no one getting hurt at the Shores fire, because that's amazing when you think about it. And I wanted you to come in for a bunch of reasons, but that Shores thing was I think everybody in Mattoon saw what Mattoon did, but and obviously, you can take a little credit, but you were there, and so we appreciate all the work you did that day.
well, you got Mattoon Fire to thank on that. Those guys really did a bang-up job, and I'm very lucky and fortunate to get to work with them, and I really have a lot of respect for the way they handle themselves.
Well, thanks for coming in. That's Chris Phipps, interim Mattoon Fire Department Chief. It's tough to say. Have a great day, buddy.
You too.
We'll see you next week. This is WEIU.